This is the 2016 Easy Motion Big Brud Pro. A lot of the other off-road models from Easy Motion have a 500 watt internally geared hub motor, just one, whereas this has two geared motors, both from Dapu, 350 in the rear, 250 up front. So this is an all-wheel drive electric fat bike. It's amazing and it's tons of fun to ride. It's sort of like a go anywhere vehicle, right? And that's what this fat bike is designed to do. You don't have suspension, it's just a rigid fork up front. But with those fat tires, you can drop the air pressure a little bit. They say sort of max 20 PSI, but you can drop it down to 15, even 5, get a little bit more traction, increase your contact patch, and maybe not sink into the sand and stuff. This is an awesome bike to ride around on these rocks because they're really kind of loose and unstable. And if I was riding with sort of a narrower tire, I think I would kind of struggle. And what I found is that regardless of how hard you're pedaling or how much force you have behind you, if you're pushing that front wheel, especially if it's a heavier front wheel like this, given the wider rims and just the bigger tire, 26 by 4 inches, you know, it can kind of like get pushed to the side. You're kind of pushing it forward rather than pulling the bike forward. So this would be ideal for snow, for loose terrain like this, or even for loose, soft sand, okay? Whereas a lot of other fat bikes, even if they have a mid-drive, all the power is coming from the back and you can kind of slide out. And I've crashed that way before, actually, especially in wet conditions, which we're also facing today, okay? So this is really a fun project or fun review because this is the ideal bike for the situation. This thing goes for $34.99, so it's not super cheap, but on the other hand, there are a lot of fat electric bikes that go for like $5,000. This one has quick release in the rear and the front. That's something Easy Motion has developed. There are these little plastic levers. You can kind of pull them out, twist, let it in, and it's sort of like a ratchet sort of thing. I mean, a little bit more manual than that, but pretty cool. Quick disconnects on both of the motor cables. The other one's on the other side there by the chainstay. Slap guard because the chain might be bouncing around a little bit. And you can see we've got 2 sprockets up front and 8 in the rear. So this is a 16 speed and you've got these little trigger shifters up front. They work pretty well, but the cockpit stays relatively clean because of their display design. You can see how skinny and narrow that thing is. It does come off. I'm gonna walk through some of the features and stuff in a separate video where it's dry and you might be able to see a little bit better. So I'm inside charging. I thought this would be the perfect time to go through the display panel. It's the same for all of the Easy Motion bikes that use kind of the proprietary down tube and hub motor design, not the Bosch bikes, and this is only for 2014, 2015, 2016. So if we look at this display panel, you know, it's nice that you can remove it. First of all, you can pop it off like that, carry it around with you. And if you upgrade to this little Bluetooth module, you can pop that in, sync it with your phone, and then use your phone as a display. And it's got GPS, route guidance, and in fact, I might cut to that and just show you what those features are. So I'm borrowing a phone and I'm inside so you can see the screen a little bit better, but if we launch the BH Premium app, this is where you can adjust your settings. You've got a user profile, which includes all of your information, like your name, if you want, your weight, your height, your age, that kind of thing. You can switch between units too, which is neat, kind of metric or imperial. Bike profile, which is very cool. I mean, they go from wheel size, crank length, battery capacity, sensor connection, like the TMM4 torque sensing, and even like locate my bike settings. So you'll need that if you upgrade for like the theft prevention. For $249, it mounts kind of at the base of the battery interface. It's very cool because then it's locked in physically by the battery and it allows you to track it down. In addition to that $249 accessory, you still need to get like a SIM card, and it seems like most SIM cards would work. I think they're like 15 bucks, kind of like you'd use for a cell phone, but apparently it's not like a subscription service, or at least that's not the information I got. And then connections, status, system diagnostic, it can kind of go through and troubleshoot. So that's the background for setup. And then ride is really where it's at. This is like the GPS enabled feature. Manual is just, hey, I want to go here, and it's a map and it tells you, just like Google Maps or Waze or any of those. Automatic is kind of another level of cool. It basically senses how much battery you have, how much you're using, and it automatically adjusts so that you can arrive without running out of juice. I really like that. I think that's cool. And then automatic is also very cool. BH, you know, it's this company that's been around since 1909, and they make a lot of fitness equipment. It's not just bicycles or electric bikes. And one of the areas that they also would do a lot of products in is exercise equipment, and some of those have heart rate monitors and different sensors and stuff. So they've integrated that really well here, where you can say, hey, I don't want to exceed 155 or 140 or whatever beats per minute. Automatically give me power when I need it. So it's like you're getting exercise, but you're not exhausting yourself. You can go out there and ride it just like it's an exercise bike, but in the real world. I think that's pretty fantastic. I think Polaris and Falco have done similar things in the past, but BH, I think that they've really mastered it with some of their exercise equipment. So to see it on this app here is just very cool. And then this is what the map looks like. You can kind of tap and do a starting point and then an ending point and change the resistance level and everything. It's a sweet app, if you take a little bit of time to dig into it, and if you get that $149 accessory. The only complaint I have on that, again, is just that then you don't really have a display. Like, this kind of becomes your display. And I feel like, I don't know, I wouldn't always want this there. There's no USB port to plug in, so your phone is going to be connected via Bluetooth. And by the way, it seems like it's Ant Plus compatible with the whole heart rate thing. But this is there now. It's a little bit big. Maybe I just want to glance over and see how fast I'm going. And what I'm looking at here might be like the GPS map thing. So I don't know. Maybe there's some refinement that could happen, but it's cool to see them introducing an app like this. Okay, so we're back at the normal display right here. I love that it comes with a little pouch, kind of keeps it from getting scuffed up. As you can see, this one might have been put face down on a table, and it's a little bit gnarly, but working pretty well. If we hold the power button, it does take a little bit longer, so just keep holding it, be patient. Kind of boots up and gives us some information about the bike. The first thing you see here is speed in miles per hour. And then over here, we've got total, distance, time, and top speed. So that's like all-time top speed, 11 miles per hour, awesome. And then we've got just this trip. So this trip, how far have we gone? How long have we been riding? And then what's our top speed? And then there's this other setting here. It's like M to go. I feel like that's a range thing, but I haven't quite figured it out. Down here, we can see a battery level indicator. 3 out of 5 bars right now, about 55%. I like that they include the percentage as well. It's just a little bit more precise. And then assist level. We're at the highest right now at 100%, but we can arrow down to 70, 50, 30, or 0. And that's kind of cool because their bikes, they're designed to be more like a bicycle with more gears and just really set up to almost look like a regular bicycle too. So riding them around tends to be pretty efficient. It's nice to just use this as a cycle computer, potentially to power the lights if the model has that. Okay, so to enter the settings, what we would do is hold plus and minus for a couple seconds. Now it would let us select our wheel size. We could arrow up or arrow down. This one's a 29er actually, so I'm gonna arrow up a little bit. 29, and hit power, and that kind of locks it in. Unit, miles per hour, but of course we could go to kilometers per hour. And I'm going to lock it in at miles. And then this snow setting. So this is kind of cool. Right now, this one, I'm looking at the Evo Snow 29 Pro, and of course we want all the wheels going all the time, and that's kind of a cool setting. It gives you some extra traction. But if we arrow down from here, we can see Eco. And what I was told is that this is sort of a smart mode that predominantly uses the rear motor, but if it feels like you need extra power, you're struggling, then it'll kick the front motor in too. So that's a neat setting there. If we arrow down, just front wheel drive, so it's going to be more efficient, maybe extend your range, but not give you quite as good of traction. And then rear, that's the 350 watt motor, and that one's going to give you just kind of the traditional ride, akin to some of the older Evos and even the Neo models. So 350 watt, 250 watt on this particular model, or you can turn it just off. And this, I think this just defaults to rear wheel drive. So I think that's a little bit redundant with rear and off, seeming to do the same things, but regardless, that's what that does. So we'll lock it in, and then we can select the battery size. So it's funny, sometimes on these demo bikes, I've been seeing that says 8.7 amp hours. Sometimes it's a little bit less. You can actually find that written right on the battery pack. So if we come back over to this one, that's not on the bike, and we flip it around like this, we can see that it says 48 volts, 8.7 amp hours down here. So that's the amp hours. So we'd go back to the display and lock it in at 8.7. And now we're back to wheel size. So once you've done that, you're all set and you're like, yep, I don't want to change anything. I'm ready to kind of lock it. Hold the power button again for quite a while. And that had me concerned. I thought it was going to shut the thing off, but it doesn't. It just sort of leaves that menu. And now we're back at the main display. Oh, and this is backlit, so if you hold down, see how it comes to life like that, and you get the little icon right there? That would also activate our lights if we were riding something like this over here. Got the Evo City, it's got the built-in lights. So that's pretty nice. Nice little extra feature. So this is the Easy Motion Evo charger. Works for any of the bikes. It's 2 amp output, which is kind of standard. I like that you can unplug the wall side if you want to, just to make it a little bit cleaner if you're packing it in your backpack, that kind of thing. It gives you a little bit of extra length as well. You can see if we follow this all the way down here, we've got the end connected that plugs right into the battery pack. So this is cool for if it's a really cold or really hot day and you want to bring the battery inside, or maybe you're charging at work. So you bring that inside, you plug it in with the charger and top it off. Really love that they've got an LED indicator on it so you can tell how full it is in case you haven't ridden for a while. It might slowly drop over time. But then if you want to, you can charge the battery right on the bike. And that's what I tend to do. I'll leave my bike, in my room. I don't tend to park it outside just because it's a little bit more sensitive with all the different components and it's kind of a high value product. So in order to do that, you disconnect the little dongle, just try not to lose that. And now this end, you can go ahead and plug directly into the bike right there on the chainstay on the left hand side. But in order to get it in, you kind of have to push it in, line it up right, and then there's this little wings on the side and you've got to tighten it down kind of like half a turn, and it kind of locks it into place. So it's cool because it feels solid once it's in. However, what I've noticed about these bikes is that if you push it back, like maybe you're trying to get it out of the way, you push it back, the crank arms kind of slowly go back, and that's what you don't want to do because it's going to break it off because it's really connected well. Same thing with the keys. A lot of the keys kind of fold and they stay mostly out of the way, but it just seems like there's a lot here that could get damaged with those crank arms. Even the kickstands, a couple times, you can see this one has some abrasions on the side of it. That's because people were moving the bikes around like this, backing it up. You can see that crank arm coming down and then right there. So it stops the bike, but it's also potentially enough force if you really pushed it to kind of bend or break that off. So you just want to be conscious both when you're charging this about not losing that, and then also about not breaking off the key, the charging port, or the kickstand. Another really cool option that they're selling now is this neoprene sleeve. It's almost like a wetsuit material, and it's designed to keep the battery a little bit warmer, or at least protect it from the cold. So they say anytime it's below 60 degrees outside, this is going to help extend your range potentially by up to 30% just by keeping the battery a little bit warmer. And I feel like there's some caveats there. I mean, it must be like if the battery was stored inside and it's already warm, if the whole bike was stored inside and it's already warm. If you leave this in your garage and the bike is super cold overnight, like that's kind of hard on the cells, and it's already going to be cold. I don't feel like this is it's going to just insulate the cold. So I would try to keep that at sort of a neutral, cool, dry location, and then potentially get yourself one of these. It's $35 and it's just got a zipper on it, so I'll go ahead and try to mount that real quick. It's almost like a real wetsuit. Not super easy to do. Just a little bit of screwing around. It's a pretty handsome accessory. I don't think I've seen anything like this on any other electric bikes. That's cool. It's got the branding and everything. Apparently, they're pretty popular in Canada and some of the Scandinavian countries where it gets cold, and people are actually trying to make their own out of this different materials and stuff. And I haven't tested. I'm here in Southern California at the BH North America headquarters, hanging out in their ginormous storage warehouse, checking out all the new models for 2016. I just think that's cool. Wanted to call out, give you a close-up on that, and it should work with most of their models, at least the Evo models. It's not going to work with the Easy Go models because they have the little pouch-style backpack, nor will it work with the Bosch system because, as you can see, it's sort of an externally mounted battery pack. But yeah, for the other ones, that's what it looks like. Okay, so some of the other things I really like about this bike is just how not electric it looks, and that's one of Easy Motion's things. It's like the e-bike that doesn't look like one. The battery is really well integrated into that down tube, same color and everything, almost seamless right there. And then the display panel we talked about. The grips, they match. They're ergonomic-ish, maybe like semi-ergonomic. There are no lockers or anything, so some of the high-end components are maybe missing. You know, Shimano Alivio derailleur down here. It's not like the highest end thing, but definitely gets the job done. And the brakes are pretty solid. 180 millimeter up front, 160 in the rear. Hydraulic disc brakes, Tektro, Ariga. They work pretty well, and then they've also got the motor inhibitor right here. So when you're pedaling, if you want to stop the motor, you just hit those brakes and it'll pretty quickly stop. It's not instantaneous, and that's one of the things about the torque sensors that Easy Motion uses. It's a TMM4 torque sensor, and I think they've programmed it to kind of continue. It doesn't cut out right away when you're riding and you stop pedaling, or when you hit the brake levers, which kind of surprised me. There's a little bit of a delay, and I think they did that purposefully just to reduce the feeling of surge, which is like as you're pushing down, the motor would ramp up, and then as you ease off at the top of your stroke, the motor would ease off, and you end up with this wavy feeling. So it feels like a good ride experience when you're on it. I definitely appreciate the 48-volt battery. Easy Motion has another electric bike from 2015 called the Snow, 29 Snow. So it's 29er, also full-wheel drive, but it doesn't have the 48-volt battery, and it's not quite as powerful as this. So this is definitely the way to go, given that this is a 61-pound bike. The battery pack here is about 5.5 pounds, so it's not super heavy. You could take it off when you're transporting the bike to reduce some weight, but again, the wheels do come off a little bit more screwing around back here, especially because there's a torque sensor versus a cadence sensor. There's no twist throttle on this. Some of the older off-road Easy Motion bikes did have a twist throttle, and I think they removed it so that this could be classified as Class 1 electric bike and be allowed to go on more trails and stuff, which is some of the California legislation that recently passed. So I think that's a pretty good overview. It's definitely a sweet bike. I think I should just hop on this thing and ride it around. But before I do, one of the other questions that comes up a lot with people is are bikes waterproof? Like, what's the deal? And I don't know if I would go so far as to say waterproof. And, you know, what part of the bike are we talking about? Some of the components are probably steel. If they get a little scratch on them, they start to rust and stuff. But the electronic systems themselves, they're all designed to be water resistant. So rain, stuff like this shouldn't be an issue. Salt water is going to be a bigger deal. So if you're riding this at the beach and you go through and you get it salty and wet, like you're kind of asking for trouble. But the display is well sealed. You know, it's designed to work even in wet conditions and to hold up pretty well. So it shouldn't be a big deal. I'm probably going to get a little bit soggy today, but you know, that's part of the job, I guess, and it kind of makes it fun, a little bit more interesting. 31.6 millimeter seat post diameter on this, and most of the other Easy Motion electric bikes, and that's important because if you wanted to smooth out the ride even more with like a thud buster or a body float, you could. You just need to make sure you get the right size, or you get a shim. Also like that they've got threaded eyelets down here near the dropout and up high at the chain stays, because you could put a rear rack on. Make sure it's a fat bike specific rack. Make sure that it's also disc brake compatible right there, so that it kind of bumps out a little bit. Their design is really nice. You can see that the wire that comes in for the motor is actually between the dropout plate right here and that little torque arm and the disc rotor. So it's not one that's like coming out from the side and can get bent or snagged if the bike tips over. There's no kickstand on this thing, so you know, it could kind of get dropped occasionally. I think I usually lay my bikes down purposefully. Like I'll just try to do it not on the drivetrain side. It's a little bit more sensitive with the derailleur. Right here, I'll do it on the left side. So in both cases, that's tucked away a little bit. Here we go, the 250 watt up front. So yeah, I mean, this thing's awesome. I do want to also call out the punched out rims, and they've got the highlighted green to match everywhere else with that tire liner. It's a pretty cool setup. Okay, I'm in the highest level of assist. I'm going to take a lap. It's starting to come down, so let's go. Do a bit of climbing right here. Now the front wheel came off the ground a little bit when climbing that steeper section, but it still helped. It kind of pulled me back down, kept me going pretty well. bike's working pretty well. And once you get those wheels moving, I mean, they just carry you. A lot of good momentum there. One of the cool things about a hub motor like this is that it's not going to interfere with shifting. You don't have to worry about mashing your gears the same way you would with a mid-drive. Of course, the weight is more rear heavy, but in this case you also have a front motor too, so it kind of distributes it, and then the nice battery pack low on the down tube. It's a nice riding bike. And you can occasionally get a little bit of unwanted power from the motor when the chain bounces and it activates the torque sensor right here, but otherwise really fluid. Like as I pushed harder, I could feel the motors sending more energy. Bike felt pretty stable even at high speed going through those rocks and loose terrain. That was cool. I've done this same course with the Evo Snow 29er Pro. I like the extra power. Again, it's a Pro with a 48-volt battery, but the narrower tires just couldn't, they weren't as stable, right? Like this is stable, handles the rocks and loose terrain better. Little snail friend down there. That's awesome. I love snails. Oh, we dropped our chain. All that bouncing going on here. Just seat it again. And we're good again. For the full write-up on this electric bike and some of the other 2016 Easy Motions, or to chime in about this, you know, what are your thoughts on full-wheel drive? Would you rather have this have been like a 500-watt rear motor? Do you think the front motor really makes a difference? I mean, I do. I had a great time, and it seems like it keeps you on track from that sliding out perspective. And it did climb really well. You know, I was mostly on the concrete getting up here, but then when you get on the rocks, you know, it's just really cool. Again, this is one of the only options you have besides trying to do it yourself, and that can be a real hassle. You have wires everywhere versus how clean this is. This is really stealthy. Like, people still might not even know that it's electric, and that could go a long way. It's just a cool bike. So anyway, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com, and of course, ride safe.